Hello, welcome to the Kam Johal show, and today we're here at the IXL Centre near Leamington on a glorious afternoon with my good friend Mr. Atul Lakhani. You'll soon learn that Atul arrived here at the age of 7, followed a formal education, got his degree, and then went into business. But I'm going to leave that all for him. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you, Atul, to the show.
Good afternoon, Cam. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, wonderful afternoon.
Absolutely. We've had given all the circumstances, we've had a beautiful summer.
Great. Tell us about this great venue.
So we're sitting in the grounds of the Dallas Burston Polo Club, which is in Leamington Spa. We've got 600 acres of land here, and the venue itself is called the IXL Event Centre, and we've most recently taken it over.
So that's a very recent acquisition, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just before lockdown, actually, in March. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
Because I've obviously been here for quite a few functions, really enjoyed the hospitality. But prior to taking over here, let's take you back. So young Atul. Yes, young Atul. You arrived from Africa with your family?
That's correct.
So how old were you?
I was around 7 years old. And so we came just prior to the exodus from East Africa, from Idi Amin.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we came a year earlier, and then my father and the rest of the family followed.
Okay, so you came to Leicester?
Yes, we immediately came to Leicester. We had an extended family here. My cousins were here, and so since 1972.
Okay, so people watching will have come here prior to that and later. And so what's life like for young Atul at 7?
It was a totally different world. We came from a different type of existence. Life was very simple in those days. And we came, actually what I do distinctively remember is how cold it was. We had so much snow, and your fingers were frozen, and you were thinking you'd never experienced anything like that. You'd never seen snow in your life. So it was certainly a bit of a rude awakening.
Okay, so the weather's very different, obviously.
Certainly, yeah.
So, and then obviously we've had very, very prominent things go on right now with the death in America and Black Lives Matter, etc. And young people may not know about the discrimination that certainly my generation and your generation faced. So I came here when I was 10, and discrimination was a daily routine occurrence. What was it like for you?
To be honest, at that age you didn't really experience it.
Mm-hmm.
But as you grew a bit older and you sort of went in towards your teens, then of course it became pretty evident that there was a culture of racism which was very much in within the country, and I'm not sure whether it was because we were all of a sudden interacting with people who perhaps hadn't seen so many Indian people in their lives.
Sure.
And so they may have had their own problems in life with jobs, with employment, with the country, and perhaps we were a good scapegoat at the time.
And of course, because a lot of Eastern Europeans been blamed for the same thing recently, haven't they? So
absolutely.
But so it's an easy way to divide people, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not sure. The fact that the UK government actually let us into the country, I'm very honoured and delighted for, because many a country turned their backs on us. So for the UK to actually allow us, that was great. But I don't think they prepared the residents of the UK for this influx of immigrants, and we see that today. So when we've got people coming from the Middle East or Syria or other war-torn countries, we actually don't know how to react to these people. They are refugees, and actually we were refugees back in the early 70s. So life is it's a set of trade-offs, and yes, it was difficult.
So you settle in Leicester, and your father opened what is arguably one of the most famous restaurants on the Golden Mile. So tell us about that, how that came about.
Yeah. So my mother and father, but both of them who've since, we've lost both my parents, and they came from a very pure vegetarian Hindu background. And, you know, my father was actually, unlike a lot of Ugandan Asians, was a very successful man. He accumulated a great deal of wealth. And indeed, he actually managed, he was one of the lucky ones because he managed to bring a lot of that wealth with him. So when we first arrived, you know, everything should have been plain sailing because he certainly had the money. But he, unlike a lot of Ugandan Asians, as I said, who were struggling, he was wealthy, but he was an old-fashioned businessman where when he shook your hand, that was a deal. And so coming to the UK in 1972 with a great deal of money, or he actually came in 73, and by 76 he was on the verge of bankruptcy because he was the old-fashioned businessman. He shook your hand, that was a deal, and that was not quite how things panned out. Now, if we look back to 1976, 77, 76 actually, as I said, my father was in a lot of financial problems, and he decided to open a venture into a restaurant, which was totally, you know, a foolish game in many ways because we'd never been in the hospitality. We'd been in dry cleaning, we'd been in furniture warehouses, we had you know, a wholesale business, we had a lorry business, but we didn't have anything directly customer facing in that respect.
So no food experience, no catering, nothing of the sort?
No, none whatsoever.
So what on earth possessed him to do that?
Well, I mean, he felt that there was a good appetite in the market for that type of cuisine. And he also felt that my mother was a fantastic cook, which she actually was. So in his day, his core business plan was, well, you know, my wife is a fantastic cook. People need to sample this food. And in any case, I need to do something before they take my house away.
Amazing. And of course, that kind of thing has moved on, hasn't it? But really ahead of the times in terms of pure vegetarianism.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's such a big thing right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you watch this business, and so I presume you go through schooling, but then you decide that you're not going to go into the family business. Was that your decision? Was that your father's decision? Because you went and got a degree in economics, didn't you?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So basically, I mean, if you fast forward, I did all my schooling in the UK, in Leicester, and then went through the college. In these periods, we did sort of experience, I guess, the late 70s. We did experience quite a lot of racism at the time. But again, you know, you sort of shrug it off and you move along. And then I took the decision that I wanted to educate myself. I wanted to better myself in life. And economics is something I found quite easy. So hence I did an economics degree, and I graduated with an economics degree, and I had a job lined up in the City of London, which I was really optimistic about. I'd met my partner, and yes, so the future was quite bright at the time. It was, you know, and all of a sudden my father's health deteriorated.
Uh-huh. So was that the trigger for the change of course?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you know, not having my parents today, you realize how important they are in your life. And, you know, so I then, I gave up my dream of working in the city. I experienced a different way of life to what my life was in Leicester.
Of course.
And I really enjoyed it. I loved the central London life. I loved the Surrey countryside. And, you know, so it took a lot of soul searching. But that said, although it took a lot of soul searching, I didn't need to be told twice. My father was not well. My mother needed me back. I was the eldest son. And hence there was that pressure as well. And,
yeah. So duty calls, right? And tradition,
calls,
respect
yeah.
for our parents.
Duty, tradition, respect. Yeah, I think you've summed it up well there.
Yeah, okay. How do you think that's changed? Because some of our younger listeners sometimes think that their parents don't know what they're talking about?
I think the younger listeners, the younger people of today, people of my children's age, they actually forget that we were their age at one time, and not that long ago. Perhaps, I mean, they love us just as much as we love our parents, or we loved our parents. But I think the difference today is that whilst I'm still young enough to have my own entrepreneurial instincts, my own vichar, my own thoughts in life. The young people of today, they live for the day.
Very much so.
They live for the day, and if it works for them for now, then they're happy with it. If it doesn't work, or if it clashes with their plans, then they're not going to be cajoled into doing something which they do not think is right for them. And who am I to argue with that? I think you respect their wishes.
Yeah.
But certainly in terms of this, perhaps they don't have the same duty, that obligation.
That sense of duty.
That sense of duty.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. But do you think, I was 10 when I came, so do you think that that's something that was instilled within us before we came because of where we came from, or because of who our parents were?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, it very much is instilled on us, from a very early age. Also, the expectancy that your father will work, your mother will be the housewife. In this country, it's not quite the same. No. But I think one thing that both our backgrounds have instilled in us is that work ethic. That commitment to want to do well in life, to want to achieve higher goals. Not to be content, not to sort of perhaps dare I say, just scrounge off the state. We're taught to actually make our way in life, and I think that's a great thing.
It is. So you're back in Leicester, running the family restaurant. So then what happens? Because something happens, and then you start your own catering and events company.
Absolutely. So I came back to Leicester, and initially, I was single in those days, and life was great. It was the 80s, and it was in the heyday. You start getting used to earning money. You start being. You're actually catapulted into this place of being a manager of a restaurant when actually by rights you should have worked your way up,
Okay,
so,
but you don't consider yourself the boss's son, therefore the owner. You consider yourself the manager.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I still felt, I believe in a meritocracy, and I don't think that you should, you've got to earn whatever, in life. It's important to earn your way up. And, but yes, I was the boss's son, and so I began running this very well-known eatery in Leicester called Bobby's, incidentally, which had been named after the famous Bobby film of the 1970s.
Of course, had to be.
Yeah, and my father actually decided when he was watching the film that he was going to develop a restaurant called Bobby's.
Wow!
So fair play to him, and that was his marketing strategy, So after working in the family business for a number of years, I got to a saturation point. I wasn't going to perhaps, I felt I could add a lot more value to the business, but being a family business, my father in the meantime had recovered fully, and he was very much still part of the business, although he was quite elderly in his age. But it got to a stage where I had to, as I said, with my own entrepreneurial instinct, whilst I recognized all the hard work my parents did, I felt that there was a better way of working. I felt that perhaps a smarter way of working. And little did I know at the time, of course. But and I embarked upon my own journey in business where I wanted that freedom. It was never about the money. It was just about the freedom to actually explore the avenues which are opening up. the opportunities with the markets, the different types of cuisines. The world had become a smaller place, and there was all sorts of opportunities out there, which unfortunately I felt that I was cocooned into the establishment where I was working. And hence, on one fine day, I decided, off a whim, perhaps after an argument, that, I was going to go out and set up on my own. And that's what I did.
So, and this will be something that a lot of our audience will recognize. There's the family business, and then the frustrations of, the old man that just won't let go. And I'm sure we've all experienced those sort of things. And so you decide that enough's enough. Off I go. I'm going to forge my own path in life.
Absolutely. And, I could have gone back into, I guess, what I'd studied. But by that time, I'd been bitten by the bug, the whole bug of hospitality, entertainment, food. I'm very passionate about food. And so I wanted to extend that career which had started, perhaps a career I'd been forced into, but I really wanted to develop that further. And, I guess in this business, you do become quite egotistical, and you want to prove that you're up there with the best, you don't want to settle for anything else. And the journey began. The only drawback was that I'd lived well, I'd spent well, but I hadn't actually saved a lot of money. So the realization that setting your own business up, I'd have to go through the same turmoil as perhaps my father did that many years before.
Incredible, isn't it? So, and you touched upon that previously, that younger people perhaps want to do everything for themselves and live for today.
Absolutely,
yeah?
Absolutely. They, maybe this is a generalization, but they do want things perhaps more on a plate, whereas, we've had to work the hard way. And I'm not alone. I know yourself personally, and many others of my generation have had the same experience. But you know what? If I was to have it all again, the only thing I would do different is perhaps spend more time with my children. That's the one drawback. But in terms of, I think you've got to go through that hardship to then appreciate anything positive that comes out in your life.
Absolutely. So you start, was it Sanjay Foods right from the get-go? That's what it was called?
Yeah, just prior to Millennium. I think that was a turning point in my life. I felt I was desperately unhappy in the business environment I was in, because whilst the business did well, there was no expansion plans, there was no progression. It would be, it would be a lifestyle business, and you'd always be within that framework for as long as, and if your son decided to go into it, then he'd go into it, and his son after. But as I've already explained, I don't think my son had any sort of, inclination to do that. So, so I set up my own business in 2000. The business is called Sanjay Foods, and I did the typical Indian thing where I named the business after my son, something one should never do.
So tell me today, to me, and I've tasted your food and I've been a customer and a friend. So today, you're not that typical catering company that I see, because a lot of our community is price-based. So there are different strategies that we employ, but almost everything that is Indian, Asian owned seems to be led by price. And I don't think that's what you guys are all about. So how does that work for you? And what made you decide that your business was going to be led by quality rather than price?
So when we first started the business, as I said, we had all sorts of aspirations. We wanted to be food manufacturers. We wanted to supply Tesco. We wanted to supply Asda.
Take over the world, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The megalomaniac in me wanted that, and I was going to be the next Curry King. But very shortly, I realized that actually this wasn't going to happen. You need a substantial sum of money. On top of that, you need a very big organization. On top of that, the payment terms, it just wasn't going to work for us. So we went back to what we knew, which was catering. And, we wanted to offer a quality product, but we knew that we had no reputation within the market, apart from my previous experience. So people would have to buy into me because nobody knew Sanjay Foods per se. So, but one thing I was always, I traveled a lot in the sort of 90s and particularly in America and the Middle East. And one thing I'd always been impressed with was the standard of cuisine. The abundance of food, and the quality, the presentation, and also I felt very comfortable eating in these places. I'm a stickler for attention when it comes to hygiene, and so I was determined to introduce a product to the market which was not only very rigid in terms of compliance, but also was very high end, and people would really ultimately crave for that. That was the goal, but unfortunately, I then realised that the lemon market was so price sensitive. As you mentioned, Cam, they wanted all those things, but they wanted to pay a very reasonable or very cheap price. And it was a very difficult period in my life because.
How did you cope? Because you're not known, so there's no reputation there, especially when you start out. And I've been there.
Yep.
And so you want to set a real high benchmark for the quality of the product that you offer.
Yeah.
So how did you balance the two, and how did you convince people that you could deliver a quality product and that they needed to pay more than somebody down the road?
Well, to be honest, for a number of years, I managed to bankroll everything, perhaps nearly bankrupting myself personally, because there was that conviction on the one hand that you've got to give a quality product, and yet there was that realization that people are going to pay for it. So what was it? Either I cut my own benchmark, my own expectation, my own standard to meet that, or I run it at a loss. And unfortunately, I decided to do the latter. I was told by my accountant, I was told by people who knew me that you're mad, this vanity. Look, you've got to cut all your costs down. You can't be establishing this brand. You've got this conviction that you want to create this brand, but you've got to pay the bills. Your accounts. That's the first and foremost important thing. And with hindsight, I do realize that absolutely. But equally, you've hit it on the head. In the absence of an established brand, how do you create a brand? Unless you've got millions of pounds or hundreds of thousands of pounds, then it's simple. It's hard work, tenacity, quality in your product, quality of the team around you, and they've got to buy into this. This isn't something that just happens. Without those people, if they don't buy into that loss leader ideology that you're following, then you're going to be on your own. You're going to become ill. You're going to become, and many of these challenges I've faced.
Yeah. So the team is important, right?
Absolutely. Paramount.
And the belief system has got to be there.
Yeah, the belief system, the team, your family, the sacrifices, your immediate family, your wife, your children, all of the things that they make is actually conducive to. So it's a horrible trade-off. It's an absolute horrible trade-off, because on the one hand, you don't see your children growing up. You miss all those important times in their lives. And on the second hand, you're following your dream, your conviction that you want to create a business which is not only stands on its own, but in many years to come, people look at it and respect it. And actually, respect is such a big part of life.
So we have this journey, it has its ups and downs, but today, the thing about your company, it's not seen nor heard, but here, this is real tangible, these premises, because.
Absolutely. So we, whilst you say it's not seen or heard, the beauty of creating a brand is that the brand walks into the room before you do. So that's very important, and hence that was part of the dream. But, someone once gave me this analogy that it's like a roof. You've got a nail and a hammer, and you're hammering away, and all of a sudden, the right nail goes in, and then the roof is hoisted, and it's formed, and I think that's what we found, that the name spoke for itself. It was synonymous with quality. We were working for the biggest families, doing some of the biggest events one could imagine. And it was only a matter of time before we would actually, we didn't want to diversify in terms of, as caterers, we wanted to very much stick within the realms of hospitality. We didn't want to sort of all of a sudden start going into import-export or anything. But the next progression would have been a venue. And so it was by chance. We had a young bride and groom who the bride was adamant she would only get married if she had our food. The groom had paid a substantial amount of deposit somewhere. Cut long story short, we found him a venue, which was actually the IXL Event Center at the Dallas Burston. And that was our first introduction to this fabulous place.
How long ago was that, Atul?
That was about 7 years ago.
Okay, so
ago.
From the first time you enter,
Yeah.
so you get here by default.
By default, absolutely.
Right? And so you weren't the caterers here.
No.
So it takes 7 years.
Yeah.
And now you own the place.
Well, I mean, when I first got here, they shortlisted 7 catering companies. So 7 seems to be the lucky number here. But they had 7 different caterers, all, some of them, a lot of them my competitors, really good at what they did. And so, which is going to be a challenge, because when 7 caterers are there, ultimately, I'm sort of, it's a bit of deja vu. You're thinking, oh my God, I'm back in that situation. I've got this fantastic venue here, but we're going to be competing on price. And as you know full well, Kam, that when you compete solely on price, the price is driven down. So I thought, what a fantastic opportunity, what a fantastic place. But, we'll probably do a little bit of sporadic work, but ultimately we'll just be one of many caterers here. So I thought, but fast forward, and within 12 months of us coming on the list of approved suppliers, we, by invitation, the owner asked us personally whether he said he wanted to get rid of all the other caterers and let me be the exclusive caterer here.
What do you think was driven, that decision? What drove the owner to think, this is a company? Because you don't have any special relationship. 7 catering companies coming in and out of the building, and to the large degree, the owner really doesn't have anything to do with the day-to-day running of this place. No. So what makes him decide to ring you?
Well, that's a great question, because, and you're quite right, we didn't know the owner. We didn't actually even in the 7 years thereafter, we barely knew him, because he's a multimillionaire based in Jersey. And what he said to me was, when he invited me across to Jersey, he said he saw in my eyes what reminded him of when he was younger. And he said, you've got it. He said, someone like you has the ability. He said, your food and your service and your people are just fantastic. He said, I've traveled all over the world. I've eaten in the finest places, and I think you provide that at my venue in Leamington.
Brilliant.
And, I would like you to take this place over.
Fantastic.
And, I nearly fell off my chair. I actually had to kind of, I was taken aback in many ways. And I had to think, did he really say that to me? Or is he, am I just hearing something I want to hear? But no. And I said, oh, that's very kind of you. So are we going to extend the contract? And he said, no, I want you to take this place over. And I said, and actually the next step was he showed me some offers it had from some big companies. And I said, Dr. Burston, there's far too many noughts here. So, and he said, no, don't worry about any of that. I want you to run this place, and I want you to take it to as far as you feel you can take. And I think you, with your knowledge, with your experience, I think you're going to take this place, and make this the best venue in the country.
So you start managing the venue and the bookings that are coming through, etc.,
Yeah.
rather than being the caterers
Absolutely.
and hosting the events.
So we've then acquired the venue.
Yes,
so
of course.
We've set up a whole team here. We've got a whole team of people employed here, and it's it was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Of course.
You know, one of those moments. I forget the name, but one of those moments which don't often come round.
Eureka. Okay.
And it was like carpe diem. You know, we need to seize the day. Let's push forward. You know, we were perhaps punching way above our weight, but equally, when opportunity knocks, you've got to be there to accept it.
Yeah, and you're never ready, are you?
You're never ready, but
No.
you've got to. You make your own luck in life.
That's right.
And yes, it was a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, and as it's now. So the thing is now, people sat at home, this fantastic venue, beautifully, immaculately dressed man. I hope that we've seen it wasn't always that. So, you started right from the bottom, but you could have taken that city career because you graduated.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, especially the youngsters, will have family businesses. What would you say, should they take the plunge and do what you did, essentially reinvented your family business?
My advice, in many ways, I'm perhaps not the best person to give that advice, in that I think the sacrifices you make sometimes may outweigh the success you achieve. But what I can say is that if you are an entrepreneur, if you've got that burning desire, then don't let anything stop you. You have to go out and get it. If you think that it's going to land on your lap, or if you think that, or if you just want to live within the status quo, then you will always and always regret it. Seize the day. Carpe diem is a favorite, term which I use. And, go out and get it. My only sort of regret in terms of business is I should have done it perhaps earlier. I should have, straight from university, seized the opportunities, looked at what's out there. And, as opposed to being sort of, whilst I loved the business, and I have the fondest memories of my time at my father's business, and nothing surpasses the memories of your mother and father. No amount of money, no amount of anything in life. However, I think they were the lost years.
Yeah, but that's a kind of a hindsight thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You will always say, I wish I'd started 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
But you will start when you start, you know. So if I get asked, it's always, I wish I'd dreamt 10 times bigger, 100 times bigger.
Yeah.
And so today, my advice is always that if your dreams don't make people laugh, that you're never going to achieve this, they're not big enough. So
it's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, so make it ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, it's only a dream.
And hindsight is always 20/20.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're quite right. And I suppose in many ways, you need to go through that journey, because it's those trials and tribulations which will actually ultimately make you appreciate the good things in life.
So if your family didn't have a business,
Yep.
then you would have followed your career that was determined by the degree that you took.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that had your father not had a restaurant or had not fallen ill, you would have followed a strict career, which again, a lot of the Asian community, be a doctor, be an accountant,
Yep.
follow that. And we appreciate education.
Yep.
And it has done us so proud.
Sure.
For the people that we have. We punch way above our weight for the population that we have in not only this country, in every country.
Yeah.
So do you ever wonder about that, what life would have been like had your father not fallen ill?
To be honest, Cam, it's sometimes better in life not to wonder.
But do you though?
Of course. I think my life would have been very different in so many ways. And as I said, there is this, it's a trade-off, and there's a heavy price. Is the price worth paying? That's what you've got to gauge for yourself. Would I do it all along? Perhaps I would. You know, I think it depends on the individual. But yes, it comes at a cost. And but you know, if we actually, the other thing is that if we live in the past, if we dwell onto what could have been, then you know, then that can evoke very negative thoughts and
Sure.
within one's mind. I mean, most recently with the COVID crisis, you know, our business actually has been decimated. You know, we've lost substantial sums of money, substantial bookings, and it's been a really challenging situation in life where you think you question your own
Judgment? Position?
You question your own judgment, your own position. You consider whether, you know, whether the steps you took in those formative years were correct. But equally, then, you know, I look back and I think of other challenges in my life, and I look back at other challenges people like my father had. You know, my father had far bigger challenges in the late 70s, where, you know, we were 2 weeks away from bankruptcy, and all his kids were young. You know, my sisters were at school or college, and you know, what one thing business teaches you, and that teaches you to be strong. You know, it makes you strong in life, and today, you know, I know that's often used, but survival of the fittest is perhaps you know, a good term when it comes to addressing challenges.
So you had to pivot your business.
Yeah.
And, you know, functions have dried up, events have dried up, so none of that's going on.
Yeah.
And we talked a few months back when you had just started the great takeaway, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, you know, it's developing a reputation for being absolute quality.
Yeah.
So all the posts that I see, nothing talks about how cheap it was.
No.
But it always talks about how good it was.
Yeah.
Right? And is that what you'd like to be remembered for?
Absolutely. And, you know, and indeed it's people like yourself, Cam, who have inspired me. That, you know, at the back of your mind, that thing where you've got quality stamped, you know, very much, and it's at the forefront of everything you do. And that's allowed us to pivot and, you know, to actually have this conviction that actually, you know, we may not longer be in retail. We're not known for it. We're known for big, large weddings, big corporate events, you know, corporate events here and abroad. And all of a sudden, all of that is decimated, it's wiped away. What do you do? Go back to, you know, what my dad did. My dad thought, right, my mum's a fantastic cook. We're going to open a restaurant. So my team are fantastic at what they do. You know, they're absolutely the best of the best. And I've decided that, okay, fine. Let's diversify, but still stay within the realms of our business. Let's do a takeaway, a high-end takeaway. But you know what? This time, let's do a high-end takeaway, make it affordable so that you can reconnect, re-engage with your community, with the people in your hometown. And, you know, and praise God, it's proving fantastic. You know, we've had nothing but a phenomenal response for a business which has just started a few weeks. And, you know, and again, you know, I've got to emphasize that is only possible because of the sheer commitment and the drive of the people around me. Because if they decided to sit at home and just be, oh, well, you know, it's not my problem, then I would indeed have a big problem.
Excellent. Ever thought about retirement?
I'd actually contemplated retirement prior to the COVID, you know, and I think the COVID has kicked that into touch. So,
Okay.
But, you know, it's, I think, look, my father was 89 when he passed away. And up until the age of 88, he was working. And I can never, I mean, indeed, Dr. Burston, who owns this fantastic complex, he has this saying, if you stop working, you die. And, you know, I do buy into that in some ways. I think you've got to. You've got to continue to work. So in terms of retirement, I think that's some way away. But in terms of perhaps delegating more, reducing my own time, that may be something I would contemplate, but certainly not for the next 5 years.
Okay, excellent.
I need to catch up with your money, Kam.
So a couple of years ago when we sold the estate agency business, I contemplated as you did, and that lasted for about 3 days, I think. I was bored out of my brains. And so now I want to retire about an hour before they put me in that box, right? And the example of, we have a dear friend on London Road, Mr. Johal.
Yeah.
And Uncle Johal was, I think, 88 or 89 when he passed away.
That's right.
And I met him a few months before, he passed. And he rang and said, "Beta, come and have a cup of tea." Because we were across the road from him. Yeah. And he said, "If I don't come into the office, if I don't shave, I feel as if I'm ill." So it's like a disease, isn't it? Entrepreneurship and business. So I've decided that business is the stuff that flows through my blood, and retirement will never be contemplated. But hey, at the same time, I don't feel as if I've ever done a day's work. Yeah, because of what I love. Do you feel like that?
Absolutely. I mean, I won't go so far as to say that I don't feel like I've ever done a day's work, because I've bloody worked hard. But I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. When you're actually enjoying what you do, when you're in your element, when you see these fantastic, and above all, these fantastic events or locations. We did a massive wedding in Marrakesh last year. And but above all, when you see the faces of those brides and grooms and the faces of their parents, the blessing you get from that makes everything worth it. And hospitality is an industry. You've got to love it to be in it. And maybe, but that actually, hospitality isn't the only industry. There are the other jobs and businesses, but one thing it creates passion within you. And once you're bitten by that bug, it's very difficult. And do you enjoy it? Yes, I love it. I flourish in it, I thrive in it. And even while we were in the lockdown, I just couldn't wait to get back. It was more frustrating for me. Yes, we've lost money. Yes, we've had a lot of hardship as a result. But the one thing was that I think we're creatures of habit, and for us, that desire to make people happy, that makes you happy.
Yeah, it's addictive, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a drug, in many ways. A legal one.
I was going to say, without the side effects.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Nasha. So.
Listen, that's absolutely fantastic. I wanted to thank you today for having us here at this wonderful place.
We'd love your viewers to come and consider us for their big days. We've got 600 acres of land. We've got helipads. We've got 2 small lakes on site. We've got a beautiful wedding venue, which even allows for today's social distancing. We've got another 300 acres of woodland at the back. And in terms of, we've got all the modern amenities one could want. And yet we've also got the beautiful character.
Fantastic.
Of, and I think in this day and age, I'm actually very optimistic that next year, whilst destination weddings had become a big part of the industry, I think with the COVID crisis, I think there's going to be a reluctance for people to want to travel. I think we're going to have more business within the country.
Yeah.
And I think, we're really well placed for that. And whatever losses we've made, I believe that we'll make them up. And above all, this will make our business far more stronger, far more resolute, and wanting to deliver fantastic events once again.
Yeah, well, look, business has its ups and downs, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen those. We've both seen those, and anybody that's been in business would have seen those. Yeah. But as you said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Absolutely. Yeah, I used that expression recently on a LinkedIn post. So yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Listen, thank you very much, and from the bottom of my heart, great seeing you again.
No, and thank
chatting.
you, Kam. And for the viewers, Kam Johal is a very successful entrepreneur and a very dear friend. And actually, through this period, he has rang me on numerous occasions to see how I am. He understood that the business was affected. And, you know, one thing in life, you know, and in business, you get to meet great people. And when you build those relationships, everything works out.
Does indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.